Okay, good morning and welcome to this walkthrough of Module 2 of the AP Language course. This is the module called How Do We Argue? Um, the learning intentions here, I'm hoping that you learn to understand that arguments can happen or are happening everywhere, that designers of text, authors, or speakers rely on strategies in order to make the speeches effective at communicating a particular point of view. And we'll start talking about some of those strategies and looking for them in texts. And then critical thinking often requires us to radically shift our perspective. And so the themes of these texts have to do with shifting perspectives, and the writing that you'll do at the end of this module asks you to consider the implications of those themes. And you can look at these success criteria. There's a number of activities, and then you'll write your first blog as part of this module. So first of all, this is a sort of funny video from Monty Python about the argument clinic. So you can watch that and consider what it means to argue. Sometimes the first thought that you have when you're thinking about argument is like a disagreement, a shouting match. In this class, I want you to consider argument more systematically and really thinking about how you can go about changing someone's mind or changing their perspective. We're taking a break from They Say, I Say this week in order for you to read this chapter from Everything's an Argument. It's not too long. It's a digital chapter, and this is a really great book. Another really great book that I like, but we will just take pieces of this throughout the semester. So read this through about what's an argument. But the thesis of this book is the title, Everything's an Argument. And as you read, you'll see that Lunsford takes that really seriously, that not just texts that we consider as texts, but also non-traditional texts and even things like fashion choices and design of objects can be considered a kind of argument. So read through this, and there are two exercises that I pulled from the chapter. There's a whole bunch of exercises in the chapter you can think about, but there are just two that I'm asking you to respond to, and that's on Google Classroom, so you can do that as you go through. While you're reading that, or after, or before, you can watch this lecture on the rhetorical framework, which I put together. There is a PowerPoint, a slides presentation here that you can look at, which is the one that I use in the video, and it talks you through the rhetorical framework. And I've created this fill-in-the-blank template for you to take notes. Feel free to use this or don't. If you prefer to take notes on a piece of paper, then you can do that. But I would recommend that you jot the important stuff down here, because this is the kind of thing that we will use over and over again, certainly throughout this week, but also throughout the course. It's the kind of thing that it's really nice to be able to pull out when it's time to do a timed essay, practice essay, for example, and to really consider how it is that these things are working together. So this is one of the few longer lectures in the course, and I do want you to take the time to work through it systematically. After that, this is a sort of a supplement to that. This is a framework you can use. This is called SpaceCat. This is a supplement you can use to remind yourself of the important things from that slideshow and to ask some questions. And I just like SpaceCat not only because, that's a cute idea, but also because it's a great way to keep in mind what's most important when you start to read and analyze texts. So you can sort of save a copy of this to your notes as well, and we will go back to some of these questions as we move forward throughout the semester. So the first text that we're going to analyze or look at through this lens, this rhetorical lens, is this essay called Pale Blue Dot. There it is right there, and that's Earth, of course, but from far away. It's written by Carl Sagan, who's a scientist and a popular scientist. Well, he was, and he died, but he was sort of a thought leader and a public intellectual for many years, and he had a very famous show on PBS called Cosmos, where he talked about the cosmos. Pale Blue Dot comes from a book that he wrote about his Voyager 1 mission. So read this little introduction, and then read the text yourself. If you want to, you can listen to me read it. This is me reading Pale Blue Dot. As you read, just consider the things that you wrote down in your notes. Consider the SpaceCat questions, and most essentially consider for this essay, what is the purpose of the text? What strategies do you notice? And then what connections do you see between Sagan and your own experiences in the world. And those first two questions have more to do with the text itself, and this one has to do with the way the text continues to be important or acts in the world. And you can make a copy of the text and then just use the comments feature to track your thinking. After you do that, and we'll talk about that in class if we're in class. There's this really great video version where part of this thing became part of Carl Sagan's show Cosmos, and then someone came along and took his voice and pieced together this really cool photo montage. So this is a remix, which is, again, it's a sort of multimodal product, but it's also multivocal because it's Carl Sagan's words mixed with someone else's ideas as portrayed in the images. So then after you're done with that, if you're in class, we'll probably have this discussion in class. If you're not in class, then you can respond to this Flipgrid, which asks you to consider and pull together some of your ideas about Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. This is a sort of self-guided slideshow on multimodality, which is this idea of arguing not just in words, but in images and sounds and textures and things like that. Something that we've already played with some in some of the activities that we've done in class. So kind of go through this slideshow on multimodality, think about what it says, and then there's a little one single slide activity where you get to practice the ideas of multimodality. There's an example of what you might come up with here. But what I want you to do is to pick a text that's a multimodal text, whether it's an image or a song or a video, or I think this is a Porsche commercial. Commercials are really great. Some short text that you can find online. Or take a picture of it and then analyze it from these different perspectives, from this multimodal perspective, and think about what's going on in there, just as a sort of practice. Because then in our next text, This Is Water, we're going to participate in a jigsaw discussion, and that will produce a multimodal text where we have analyzed This Is Water. So you can look at this discussion part 1. This Is Water is available here, but really we're going to be editing and making notes on the This Is Water collaborative documents that are on Google Classroom. In part 1 of the jigsaw, you'll be working with the people in this group you'll be working independently, but in the same document, to first read the essay and to annotate it from this perspective. So, for example, these students are in charge of analyzing the rhetorical situation, and there's some guided questions, and there's your shared document, which again is also in Google Classroom, and on down here. These students will start by analyzing it from this perspective, and they'll become experts in that. And you'll use the Google Comments feature to both comment on the text and also respond to each other. And just so you know how that works, you can comment on the text here. And then if your friend has commented and you want to add to it, you can add another comment. And so I really want to see you create a conversation around the text in those Google Comments. After you've done that and you've had a few minutes to look over that, you'll move to the second part of the jigsaw. And in the second part of the jigsaw, you'll move into your campfire groups, which are the kids that you're sitting close to in the classroom. And you'll be the resident expert for your section. So, for example, if you were in charge of analyzing rhetorical situation, then when you move to your campfire group, you'll probably be the only person in that group who has analyzed rhetorical situation. There may be a little overlap, but so then when you move into that group, you're in charge of talking with your group about what you found, and then they in turn will share what they found, and you can sort of work together to do a full analysis. And the outcome of that analysis will be a multimodal text, a multimodal analysis. So the sort of simplest form of a multimodal analysis would be that you create a Google slide, a digital poster, sort of like you did here, but which treats the text in more detail. That said, I'm going to kind of open it up because there's a lot of different ways to create multimodal texts, and there are some that you've probably used that I haven't, but I've given you some ideas. You might think about creating a comic. You might create a Prezi. You might create a short video, and we have access to the video editing software for you to use, which has a bunch of preloaded images and B-roll footage and things like that. You might create a Powtoon. You might create an infographic using Canva. But once again, some of you have found some really cool tools that you like to use. You could even think about creating a series of tweets or creating a, um, I can't even, I don't even know. You may be the expert on the kind of multimodal text that you want to create. Whatever it is, though, it should be effective in that it's attractive. A good text argues its point, and it should contain at least these things. One would be to create a thesis statement, and I'll give you guys a template for a beginner's template for a thesis statement that really sort of captures the meaning. That it covers each of the areas of the rhetorical framework. You can use SpaceCat, or you can use the sections from part one, or a combination of two. That I want you to kind of try to portray the sort of all the different elements, not just, for example, looking at rhetorical situation, but also looking at some strategies or looking at the organization and structure, so that it does a kind of complete analysis. It includes specific references to the text, which may be paraphrases or key quotes or both, that support your analysis. That it employs visual texts as well. This is multimodal, so use visual text or auditory text or both, to emphasize or bring out the meaning in your analysis, and that it's got an inviting visual format, that it's professional looking, and that it stands on its own, which means that we don't need you. We may have an opportunity for you to talk to us a little bit about your form, but should be a text that someone doesn't need you to present. It's not a presentation, it's a text that makes its own argument. So it should be the kind of thing that if I were to post to Twitter or someone were to find online, that they would be able to understand it and that they would be able to gain from it, having read This Is Water, right? That it would add to their understanding. The last thing for the week, which will happen, and while we're in class, this is going to be happening on Thursday and Friday, these two elements. We'll do part one Wednesday night, and then on Thursday and Friday we'll work on this. So if you're working from afar, make sure you're sort of on track with that. And then over the weekend, you'll write your first blog, which is in response to one or both of these texts, and it asks you to shift your perspective, to identify a specific problem or conflict that has been troubling you. This can be big or small. It can be a curiosity, or it can be a real controversy. And then think about that problem from one or both of these perspectives, and consider, how does Carl Sagan ask you to think about that problem differently? So put your own thinking, your own problem, your own issue, your own concerns from the world in conversation with one or both of these texts, and see how it offers you a new perspective. And there's some guidelines here for that, but this is our first sort of attempt at blogging. So I would also say, follow the guidelines, go back to the model blog, the blogging is a persuasive essay, and think about what she says about the forms of blogs. Go back to the blog assignment and look at the assessment, but also do your best and create something that you're proud to publish, because you will publish it. That's an overview of the module, and as different details come out, I'll be sure to update you. See you later. Bye.